Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much, everybody.
Do you want these trials to happen before the 2024 election?
This is Donald Trump in the aftermath of his arrest and arraignment in Washington, D.C., where he pleaded not guilty to 4 charges related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. This marks his 3rd indictment, although likely not his last, as the law and order president finally learns what law and order actually means. As for his statement here, first of all, it really is amazing how the guy can't help himself. He has to find a way to shit on either Democrats or Joe Biden in this scenario by claiming that Washington, D.C. is completely unrecognizable, as if things are only now bad because of Biden and that the world simply cannot function without Donald J. Trump. Which might be a nice fairy tale that he tells himself, but let's remember, when Donald Trump left office, the city that he left was completely locked down because of a certain someone deciding to incite an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Not to mention contending with a pandemic that was still raging because that same certain someone decided to pretend that COVID was all a hoax that could be cured with disinfectant. So it's a nice revisionist history to say that Washington, D.C. was a utopia on January 20th, 2021, but that city was contending with major issues unilaterally because of him. And then, of course, when he's done with the self-aggrandizement, we enter the victimhood stage. He claims that his prosecution is the persecution of a political opponent, which is interesting because Joe Biden did not indict Donald Trump. The Democrats did not indict Donald Trump. No politician indicted Donald Trump. The indictment was returned by a jury of everyday Americans based off the evidence, of which there is an absolute ton. That is why Trump is being prosecuted. But he's pretending that this is a persecution because he lacks the capacity to take responsibility for his own actions, because something party of personal responsibility. He then says this is happening to the person who's leading by very substantial numbers, suggesting that the only reason he's facing prosecution is because he's the leading candidate for the Republican nomination. And this is a common refrain for Trump, wherein he frames being held accountable for his own crimes as if he's the victim of some political ploy by the Democrats. He's basically suggesting that he isn't allowed to be prosecuted while he's a candidate because any prosecution for anything can be just chalked up to election interference. Because after all, the prosecution itself may have an impact on voters' decisions. So no candidate can be held accountable, meaning if you, I don't know, set a building on fire or mug someone on a street corner or even murder someone, all you gotta do is declare your candidacy for office and you immediately have a legal force field around you. And if any prosecutor dares try to prosecute you, then all you have to do is wail election interference and you're in the clear because after all, once you're a candidate, you are no longer subject to laws. Sound legit? Didn't think so. And then of course Trump ends here by saying this.
This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him.
That Trump is leading Biden by a lot and that if you can't beat him, you prosecute him. Biden already beat Donald Trump. I get that he perceives himself as some unbeatable force, but the last time Biden ran against him, 7 million more Americans cast ballots for Biden over Trump. And not only that, Donald Trump has been responsible for election losses party-wide for years. In 2018, Democrats won the House by the biggest midterm margin in history. In 2020, Biden beat Trump himself by 7 million votes, held the House, and flipped the Senate. And in 2022, a year that was supposed to be some huge red wave year for Republicans, Democrats still retained the Senate and only lost the House by a historically narrow 5-seat margin. Every single Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate running in a swing state on Trump's MAGA agenda lost, every one of them. Arizona now has a Democratic governor and 2 Democratic senators for the first time in 72 years. The Pennsylvania House just flipped to Democrats for the first time in over a decade. Michigan Democrats took full control of the state government for the first time in 40 years. I can go on and on, but the point is clear. The suggestion that Trump is some unbeatable force of nature would be more effective if it hadn't been debunked in literally every election for the last 6 years. And of course, Trump's insane statements didn't stop there. He also took to Truth Social, writing, "Considering the fact that I had to fly to a filthy, dirty, falling apart, and very unsafe Washington, D.C. today, and that I was then arrested by my political opponent who was losing badly to me in the polls, crooked Joe Biden, it was a very good day." Again, he flew into a city that he left on lockdown the last time he was in it. He was arrested by a Department of Justice that had secured an indictment from a jury of regular, everyday Americans because of crimes that he made the conscious decision to commit, knowing full well that they were illegal. And finally, the fact that Donald Trump is framing his third indictment in just a couple of months as a good day is an inadvertent admission about how he actually perceives the rule of law. Not for nothing, but if I got indicted once, much less 3 times, I'm pretty sure the last thing I'd call it would be a good day. But then again, I'm not a psycho criminal whose sole function in life is to avoid accountability for my own actions. But of course, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I say to debunk Trump's lies, because as far as he's concerned, none of this is about the truth. It is about perpetuating a narrative that he thinks will help him. He thinks that if he can convince people that he's the victim of some unseemly persecution, that he can curry favor in the next election and become the next president, and then use the levers of government to withdraw what would be his DOJ from prosecuting him. That's the plan. That's his Hail Mary play. Remember, Trump has no defense here. Jack Smith has him dead to rights. Trump's own former officials have nearly all conceded that Trump is screwed. The witnesses against him are almost all Republicans. The only move for Trump here to avoid prosecution is by installing his lackeys to the very department that's prosecuting him. Leave it to this stalwart of corruption to try and will the most corrupt option into existence. So you should absolutely expect more lies from Trump, because after all, this is what landed him here in the first place. If Trump was capable of telling the truth, he wouldn't be facing at least 3 indictments, if not more to come. If he was capable of telling the truth, he wouldn't have needed to pressure state officials to invent imaginary votes. If he was capable of telling the truth, he wouldn't have needed to summon state legislators to the White House. If he was capable of telling the truth, he wouldn't have needed to lean on useless garbage lawsuits that went nowhere. If he was capable of telling the truth, he wouldn't have needed to pressure the vice president into unilaterally anointing him the winner of an election that he lost. But Trump isn't capable of telling the truth, and he never was. So expect the lies, expect the obfuscations, and expect the incitements to violence, because these are his only tools. And they're the tools for which he is currently being tried in federal court. So he can employ these things at his own risk, but he's about to learn that there are consequences for his own actions. And while he may entertain the rubes in his Republican base with these lies, something tells me the jury won't be quite as forgiving. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.